Hi everyone and welcome back. We're now got our first panel event, which is based all around switching to digital. So the event this week is all about helping encourage people move from their current career into one in the digital tech industry. And I'm joined by a brilliant panel today. We've got 3 people who have already done that. So without further ado, I'm going to jump over to them and let them tell you a little bit about their story and their background and how they've come to work in the digital and tech sector. So if I can start with you, Louis, can you just tell us, can you introduce yourself first of all, and just tell us a little bit about kind of what your current role is and kind of the journey that you took to get here?
Yeah, no problem. So, hi everyone, my name's Louis Garbett. So I am currently a product manager at the Home Office. I'm a brand new product manager. I'm only 3 weeks into this role. So I've very, very recently made the switch to digital. I think I'm very lucky. I'm really excited to be in this position because I've been able to kind of secure a role on what the Home Office call their Digital Career Development Programme, which is basically a cohort of about 33 people, all from basically a range of different roles. I'm one of 4 product managers that they took on this year, and they've been doing it for the last 5 years. I'm a trainee product manager. I'm on placement with one kind of team working on one product for 6 months, and in 6 months' time, I'm going to be on another team on another placement. And the idea is that I'm kind of working towards a standard where I can kind of hopefully apply to be an associate product manager instead of a trainee product manager. So I'm kind of constantly going to be working towards that standard. So it's a really, really exciting opportunity, a real kind of supported learning opportunity. And yeah, a real chance to learn the role of product manager, which is what I've been trying to do for about the past 2 years. So I'll tell you a bit about my background and how I've ended up doing what I'm doing. So I'm 31 in December. So I've actually been kind of working for the last 7, 8 years in industry. After university, I did a social sciences degree in American studies, totally random. Don't regret it. It was amazing. I got to go to America for a year, but it wasn't the most vocational of degrees. And so after that, I've kind of been jumping from one job to the next. I don't know if anyone else has done a social science degree, but I would always kind of consider myself a bit of a generalist, like not an expert in anything. I'm not a thing. And that always kind of bugged me. I kind of really wanted to be a thing, like I am this. But I could never really say that because I kind of got a job. I got a graduate job at a local university after university, which essentially was kind of administration, moving into kind of project management, moving into kind of employer engagement. And so I had a job where I was kind of had to communicate a lot, had to be a good organizer. And yeah, I would say kind of project management. I've worked in the public sector or the charity sector my whole career to date. I've never worked in the private industry. Moving from one job to the next as what you would call probably a project manager, program manager, stakeholder manager, working in jobs where I have to kind of work with lots of different stakeholders. I did a job where I had to, for the British Red Cross, where I was kind of leading a youth volunteering program. Most recently, I worked for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority in a role where I kind of worked with head teachers and principals of local schools and colleges, and I had to help them develop better careers education services for their students. So I had to work with lots of different stakeholders, work with senior leaders, staff like teachers, the students themselves, local business people as well. So there's a lot of stakeholder management, a lot of project management. Had to spin a lot of plates. But as you've heard, nothing to do with technology, nothing at all technical. But for about the past 2 years, I have been thinking about where am I going in my career? What do I want to be? Do I want to kind of work in the public sector, working within education, which was kind of loosely where I'd been working for maybe the past 3 years, or do I want to make a change? And I kind of decided that I want to kind of see what else is out there, and was half thinking kind of strategically in terms of the tech sector and technology being a growth industry, lots of jobs available. My girlfriend's a user researcher, so I was able to kind of hear firsthand the culture that she works in, and the kind of teams and methodologies that she kind of operates in. And it just sounded really interesting. It sounded really collaborative, like a really collaborative space to work. It was quite kind of casual. She was just wearing her own clothes, and I was always kind of suited and booted. And it just was a really attractive proposition, really. But then I had to figure out, if I was going to enter that world, what would I do? And so I kind of did a bit of a skills audit on myself. I kind of really thought about where my, what I'm best at, really. So where my skills lie: communication, organisation, kind of stakeholder management. And what I did then was go and talk to people in industry. So I had kind of an into the industry through my girlfriend, who, knew lots of different people who worked in different professions within technology. So I met with a product owner and spoke about, and kind of just caught up with for a coffee. I invited her for a coffee, bought her a coffee, and we just had a chat about that role. And I kind of wanted to know, what skills what's your day-to-day look like? What skills do you use? How did you get into the role? I met with an agile coach as well, because I kind of started reading as well on agile methodology, Scrum methodology. I just wanted to kind of immerse myself in kind of knowledge that I might need if I was to make the step, and also to understand if it was something that interested me. So I met agile coach, which it wasn't going to be for me. You kind of need to be very experienced in agile to be a coach in agile. So I would kind of wrote that off my list. I spoke to a business analyst as well, and what I started to discover, there was a technical side to tech, being a developer, computer science, which was never going to be my side, and then there's the business side and the product side, which is product manager, business analyst, both of which kind of were really interesting to me, because a lot of that was organization. It was a lot of communication between different types of people who have different stakes in whatever you're working on, whether it's other product managers, the business analysts, the developers, the technical, the network designers. And I really like the idea of kind of being someone who's trying to communicate something to different people in different ways, because that's what I was doing in my current job. I was communicating things to senior leaders in schools, to teachers who would need to kind of take that information in a different way, to local business people who, again, needed to learn about the career education world from a different angle. So I was kind of used to of communication and communicating to different people. So after doing all of this research and meeting people, and I also kind of did half-heartedly did a product management course on a learning platform, Udemy, which was actually really useful, and again gave me a lot more insight and kind of cemented the fact that I think I'd be a good fit for it, knowing myself. And so then I had to start applying for jobs, or figuring out how I was going to get a job as a product manager or a business analyst. At this point, it was kind of, I was interested in both. And I was kind of applying for junior product manager and junior business analyst roles, not really getting anywhere. And I'm not surprised, because I've got zero experience whatsoever. I was just kind of trying to convince them I had the skills and aptitude, but I think they needed a bit more than that. And so I wasn't getting anywhere. And so that's when maybe luck comes into it. But I was constantly looking at LinkedIn jobs. I was looking at roles that I could potentially apply for. And this opportunity at the Home Office popped up, and it said Digital Career Development Program, which is exactly what I needed. And so I applied. I was looking to get an interview, and I got through. I think it was pretty competitive, so I feel really delighted to be in this position. But I remember reading kind of the job spec, and it didn't need experience; it just needed basic understanding of certain kind of product management principles, which I think I had at that point, from reading, from talking to people, So I was able to get this role, and now I'm on this program for the next 12 months. And I think this is probably my foot in the door now. And as long as I don't mess it up, hopefully I'll be progressing to kind of get promoted within the Home Office, which I think is pretty standard on the program if you can do it. And hopefully I can do it. And that's kind of how I got there and where I am now.
Thanks, Lou. I think there's probably a lot of things that you've said there that I think people watching will relate to. So thank you for that. What about you, Tom? Because you've taken a slightly different route.
Mm. Oh, I love that story, Louis. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's fantastic how you've seen a skill and you've developed on that skill. Certainly, for me, I've got the similar background from a humanities background. I did classics actually as a degree, so that was really pleased to get a first in classics, then fell into academic research, so PhD in walking through Rome. So that was the title, and then subsequently did a PGCE in classics with some French, because I had actually, like you, Louis, gone to Switzerland as part of my studies with Bristol University, which is great. But again, like you, thinking about what I could offer specifically. I, with the teaching, it was definitely, and again, I'm sure Louis, you've got some stories to tell with the experience of teaching and the difficulties of kind of making sure that children are engaged and all of that side. The teaching was quite full on, certainly, and fascinating. So I was teaching Latin and French, and also I was tutoring at City Lit, ancient Greek, actually. So it's quite a wide kind of range of things I was doing to earn money. And then I got into videos, making videos, YouTube videos for the lessons, which I really enjoyed, and definitely heartily recommend that as a way of marketing yourself and also fixing your own knowledge. Certainly teaching is a great way to improve your own understanding. So I started doing some videos for classics, and then got interested in building my own site for the videos. And then in 2017, did a boot camp at Makers Academy, which is a really good boot camp. Highly recommend it. And they had a very good kind of assistance for careers, the really, really good careers department, which I'm sure they still have. So then I got into a job in Brighton. So that was 2 years in Brighton. Homeflow, which is a kind of estate agent websites company, and then subsequently, after 2 years there, working with Ruby, which is a language that I'm sure people have heard of, and it's kind of a programming language. And then subsequent to that, got into an apprenticeship with Codurance, hence the name on the front. So yeah, that was kind of my journey. So the apprenticeship has been really, really good experience. It's 4 months of training. There was some agile training on that as well, but specifically focus on katas. So the thinking is that you can improve your coding through practicing repeated algorithms in different languages. So that's been a really nice way to improve my skills, and working with some really top level people. There's a guy from Greece who was just really quite a hard taskmaster, but a really, really good guy to work with. So that's been a really good way to improve. And then that really pleased to be back in education in my first project, which is for digital theatre. So I mean, possibly not to give all the game away regarding what they're doing, but it's digital theatre is like Netflix for theatre. So they've got an educational side for that, and wanting to put materials in to libraries across the world, actually. So I think there's universities in America, etc. So I'm building a greenfield project for that. So I'm really, really pleased with how things have turned out. Certainly would reiterate on what Louis was saying, with it being a lot of hard work and effort that's required, but it is a very interesting kind of approach, and also this way of just trying to get a bit more of a specific skill. So certainly, as Louis mentioned with the project management, for me, it's more of kind of software development for the moment, but certainly some interest in the business side through I'm kind of a consultant, as it were. So that's kind of my role at Codurance.
Thanks, Tom. That's really interesting how you've gone from kind of teaching into tech, into a role that's working with education again. I really like what you say about kind of what you're doing now, but obviously there's still that look towards the future of how things, continuing to develop those skills as the industry changes as well. That's really good. So Vicky, you're actually an apprentice software developer now, aren't you? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, so I can definitely see crossovers from my kind of journey at the moment with what Louis and Tom have mentioned. So I am on a 15-month apprenticeship. I've got about 2 months left. So the education provider is called Cognation, and my company are EMIS, which basically produce software solutions for the healthcare sector. And I always kind of come a little bit unstuck when someone asks me, like, how did you get here? Because I think I always considered apprenticeships for kind of 16-year-olds just leaving school. I never considered it as a way that I could change career at the age of 30. And I never in a million years thought that software development was for me. It had never entered my head. And considering that my other half is a software developer, a very successful one, and we've been together for a very long time now, it's quite ironic, really, that I've ended up here and kind of found my own way here without really kind of being influenced by his journey as well. So probably, like Louis said, kind of started maybe a few years ago, probably about 3 years ago for me. So I had a very successful career in corporate fundraising. So again, kind of the charity link, and had lived in London for a few years. And we'd always talked about going travelling. London was never meant to be a permanent solution. So we decided to quit our jobs, me and my other half, handed in the notice on our flat, then told our parents about the one-way tickets to Colombia, which went down very well, and had this amazing 10-month trip. And I think by having that space in my life, which is very drastic and not everyone gets, but it made me realise that I was really wanting to come home and face a new challenge, like give myself something new. It wasn't that I wasn't necessarily enjoying my job as such, but I just realised it wasn't fulfilling me in the way that it used to. And I was just ready to, I've never been this person that thinks that we have to be stuck in one career path. And I was ready to see if there was something else that I could explore. So when we returned home, we decided to move to Manchester. It's a little bit closer to our families. And I gave myself the personal challenge of being as open-minded as possible with where this new journey could take me. So I took a contract role in my old life as a corporate fundraiser to kind of give me that financial stability, and very much threw myself into kind of all of the events and workshops I could get myself signed up to. So trying to explore what Manchester had to offer, which was a little bit easier in person back then. And it became very apparent of the active and very vibrant and really supportive tech industry that we've got in Manchester. So I just kind of naturally fell into more tech events, and the more tech events I went to, I realised how interesting they sounded, but had at that point not really found where I wanted to be within it. And it wasn't until I surprised both myself and my other half by signing up for a one-day coding workshop, which was put on by an organisation, a not-for-profit called Django Girls, aiming to get more women coding. So I signed up for that, and my other half was like, really? And I was like, I've said I'm going to be open-minded. We're going to see how it goes. It'll be a learning curve. Even if I just understand more about your job, it'll be useful. Surprises even more when I came home and was like, oh my God, I really enjoyed that. Like, I want to know more. And after about 6 months of teaching myself, thinking it's a hobby, it'll pass, I realized actually, no, like this could be the solution. This could be actually my next step and what I wanted to do in my next career. So I started to kind of make baby steps with, okay, what are the options here? Like, where can I go? And basically the 1-day coding workshop that I'd done that had been put on by Django Girls had been based at Code Nation. So they are a coding school and an apprenticeship provider. So I'd already got a link to those guys and had been kind of watching their opportunities come around and realised that they had the apprenticeship route. So went along, asked more questions about what would be involved. Did I have the kind of the relevant experience or skills that were required? Because obviously I didn't have years of experience, and I wasn't quite sure what was required for an apprenticeship. And they supported me in going forward for the interview with EMIS. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't think I'd get it. I was like, everyone else is going to have so much more experience. I'm just going to see it as a learning curve. I'll see, how the whole process pans out. It'll be fine. And then I got invited to the second stage. I was like, okay. And I love what the organisation's doing. So for me, it was really important. I'd got into the charity sector originally to kind of feel like I was making a positive difference. And I was a bit worried if I changed career that I wouldn't have that same connection by moving to the private sector that I'd had with my work before. So hearing about the work that EMIS does with the healthcare industry was really, really important for me, because I realised that I could still have that positive impact that I wanted. So anyway, I got the job. And I think, Louis, you mentioned that kind of stroke of luck, and I definitely feel like I was kind of in the right place at the right time. But looking back and thinking, okay, what did I have to offer if it wasn't necessarily the hard skills of coding? It was the willingness to learn, to like throw myself at something new. Coding or software development is all about problem solving. And I had a whole career before this in kind of working out problems. I'd always thought it was a really isolated job, and it's not. Like, I don't know why I thought that at all. I just thought you sat at your desk and just coded away. And actually, it's really heavily based on teamwork to get a solution that works and meets the requirements. So I spend a lot of time talking with my team and working out exactly what needs doing and how we're going to do it. But yeah, like I kind of look back and think, how did I get here? Like, this has been the craziest of years, and I definitely didn't think that, this would ever be part of my journey. But it's been amazing, and I think it just shows like the importance of, like, if you want to change careers, be open-minded. Like, don't put yourself in a box before you start, because you will close yourself off to so many opportunities. And I think kind of what Tom and Louis have said very much shows that.
That's brilliant. I really like what you're saying about having that open mind, because I think that is really important. I think it's easy to kind of get stuck in a world of what you know rather than, and as we all know, in digital and tech, it's changing every week. There's new roles, there's new technology coming out. So I think that being open-minded is really important. So just coming on to it, so obviously you've all kind of taken sort of different routes into this. What do you think has been the biggest challenge you faced along the way? Tom, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely agree with Vicky's points about problem solving being the main skill here, whatever field you're in, whatever area of this kind of meta profession of programming. So from a humanities background, I claimed to have some of those skills, but I think there's a whole side that you need to develop as a coder. And Polya's How to Solve It is quite a nice book as an introduction to problem solving. And Barbara Oakley's book, A Mind for Numbers, is quite a nice way to get into maths more generally. There's definitely quite a lot more than you might think in terms of, like, making sure that you do engage with those skills of problem solving, but it is a practice. It is something you can do to improve. Nice story of a I think it's a violinist who's saying, you know, I'm desperate to get to the Carnegie Hall because he's late for the show, and there's an old man he meets on the way, and he says how do I get to the Carnegie Hall? And the old chap says, you know, practice. So certainly practice is the main thing. Any way you can find a way to repeat the skills which you need to use on a day-to-day basis, and take it out of that kind of more kind of high pressured environment to something which you can slowly improve incrementally. For the coding, it's dojos and doing katas and that kind of practice, which is a really good way to improve. But I'm sure the others have other skills which you need to develop as well, such as communication.
Yeah. What about you, Louis? What have you found has been the biggest challenges? Because obviously you're very new in the role that you're doing currently, but in that journey that you've taken, what's been the biggest challenge?
I mean, I think it's probably kind of overcoming self-limiting beliefs, really, and figuring out that actually it is something you can do. Because the jump from where I am to where I was to where I am now, 2 years ago when I was first kind of mulling it over, just seemed massive. Like how in the world will I be able to enter that world without any experience? How am I going to get that experience to apply for a job? All of that kind of insecurities and things that might just make you stop. That's probably why it took me so long, because they're things that you need to get over. If I didn't have those, I might have been able to do the jump in a year. But because you've got kind of like you start doing a bit of research and you get a bit like, oh my gosh, it's interesting, but I still have no idea what my route into this is going to be. And so for me, I was kind of procrastinating. I'd do a little bit of work, research, and then I'd procrastinate because it seemed too hard. Then I'd go and meet someone because I'd get motivated again. And then I'd procrastinate again because I was like not getting accepted for any jobs or anything like that. So I think it's just kind of the perseverance, really, to try and achieve whatever you want to achieve. And then once you kind of, I'd say that's it, because I don't think there was necessarily any point where I was like, oh no, I'm absolutely 100% certain that I'll be able to do this. Opportunity is everything. And so even, a week before I found the opportunity that I was able to apply for and get at the Home Office. I was looking regularly at roles and looking for roles that would be appropriate for me to apply for, whether it's business analyst or product manager. But I was still, in the back of my head, I was like, I have no idea. I still don't know where my route is. I just need to keep plugging away and looking and hoping. And then something popped up that was perfect, basically. And I think when I said luck earlier of finding that opportunity, I think luck's a part of it, but the big reason I was able to find that was because I was in a position where I was making myself look at job boards all the time for product managers and setting alerts for anything remotely that could work for me. So it took a few months of looking and applying failed applications until I actually found one that works for me and that was suitable for me to apply for, and that had a good chance. And straight away, I knew I had a good feeling about it because of the way that it was described. And so, although I don't know how few and far between those real entry-level opportunities are, they are out there, and it's just making sure that you're in the game to make sure that you get them, because it's easy to just, I'm sacking this off now for the next few months because I'm bored of not seeing anything. You've just got to try and keep at it, and something hopefully will pop up like it did for me. And I'd say that's probably the biggest challenge, is just perseverance.
Yeah. Thank you. What about you, Vicky? I saw you nodding when Louis mentioned self-limiting beliefs. What's been kind of your biggest challenge in the journey so far?
Yeah, Louis' story made me think of the saying about how do you eat an elephant? Is it an elephant? And it's like bite by bit, like mouthful by mouthful. And I think that's definitely quite key, because if I'd really focused on where I would be now, like 18 months ago, I'd have run away screaming. Like, that would have been like, don't be silly. And it is kind of taking it one step at a time. But I think my biggest challenges are probably more around rewiring my brain to learn again. After so long out of the education world, I think it does take a while. Like I've learned so much over such a short period of time. The apprenticeship route has required 2 exams, portfolio work. I've got more assessments to come. That has taken an adjustment to go back to that. And the second thing I would say is making myself vulnerable. So I've learned a lot about myself over the last kind of year, just over a year. And I've continuously had to make myself vulnerable and say, you know what, I don't have the answer. I'm here. I don't know that. Please, can you help me? And I think that also is a skill to be able to and quite humbling. But that was the journey that I gave myself, really. Like I threw myself at something new. I knew that the only way that I would be successful was to lean on the people around me and learn from them. So I've tried to do that as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I know we had a lot of chat in some of the events yesterday about it's fine to not know the answers. No one's expecting you, especially as you're moving in, no one's expecting you to know the answers. It's about how you approach them. So I think that's the thing about being that vulnerability is really important, because I suppose that's how we all learn.
Yeah, but I guess just to finish, sorry, Becky, but that goes back to some of those insecurities that Louis mentioned, and not letting those hold you back. But maybe like seeing like your gaps for development as opportunities rather than something that will, tie you down.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about the challenges, talked about your roles, talked about the challenges. What's been kind of the biggest achievement that you've had so far? Vicky, do you want to carry on?
Still being on the apprenticeship, not running away screaming. I guess one of the great things about this job is that every day, and it sounds really corny, but it's basically just small challenges day by day, maybe multiple challenges a day that you get to have small wins with and get to build more confidence and learn more in software development. So, like tiny tickets will come through, it's problem solving, and you get this amazing rush of, yes, I managed it. So I think sometimes it's quite difficult, and the other guys might find the same, that we're on quite fast track routes, and sometimes it's hard to sit down and go, okay, what have I achieved? You might be stuck on a task, and the only thing that you can focus on is this one thing that you're stuck on, rather than seeing just how much progress you've made. So in advance of this, I was like, okay, just what have I managed to achieve this year? And honestly, I think if you take a step back and see yourself from the outside, I'm really amazed by just how much I have picked up, moving to software development, again, moving more into the formal education world, but also just software development. I can see now how my mind's almost changing with how I view things. Yeah. And all the different tools and technologies and just ways of thinking about things. This was all very matrix to me. But more and more, the language that the sector uses is becoming much more embedded in my brain, and I'm understanding more as I go along. So that I guess what I'm trying to say is there isn't one single achievement. It's all just been a journey, and taking stock of where I am. I'm pretty proud of still being here, still plugging away, and being able to see where I'm headed as well.
No, that's great. That's really great. What about you, Tom? What's been the biggest achievement of your journey and moving into the digital space?
Yeah, so I was pleased to do a front-end smoke testing application for the HomeFlow for the so I suppose, it sounds a bit less. That was quite good fun, and it was nice to be given a greenfield project by my CTO at that time. So that was good. More recently, really pleased to be on this greenfield project for the this Mark Records, which is what we're doing for digital theatre, which is really good fun. So that's involving quite a lot of transfer of information from a Contentful website to Mark format, which is really, really good. In terms of achievements more generally, yeah, I agree with that rush of problem solving being really important, that Vicky's mentioned. This kind of you do start after a little while. You do start to get those little, I'm getting it. I'm starting to understand it. And one way that I found which has really helped towards that is making notes, like noting everything, because it's easy to think that if you've got information on the internet, that it's just there and you can always get it. But actually noting it down, I'm a really careful note taker of all things which I've learned and then putting it together. So I think that's real skill of kind of putting together knowledge, because that's essentially what it is, isn't it? I suppose it's kind of putting together knowledge in the right format so that it can be used by the company that you're working for. So hopefully that kind of gives.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And Louis, what about you?
Question again, sorry.
What's been the biggest achievement in the 3 weeks you've been in the role?
I think
your journey overall as well.
I mean, I would put it down to getting the actual position, really. I think, in the 3 weeks, I can't really say that I've achieved too much yet, other than epiphanies of understanding of what I'm meant to be doing, like you would in any job. But I think, the biggest achievement is just being able to enter the sector that I was targeting way back when. I was like so delighted to be able to get the position when I got it, because I felt like a whole kind of new world had opened up to me, and I just made that first step that I've been trying to do for the last 2 years. So that's the kind of the end result and of all that effort. So that's my biggest achievement, would just be surviving to be able to actually get a role, basically.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. So, given everything we've heard about kind of how the journeys you've individually taken, kind of some of the challenges and the things that you're really proud of as well, if you were to give one piece of advice to someone listening today that is thinking about or is starting out their journey into kind of a career in the digital tech industry, what would it be? Louis, do you want to start?
Yeah, definitely. So I think for me, it would be, I remember when I was kind of figuring out how to find out about it, my partner, who's a user researcher, was adamant that I should speak to people, basically network, not kind of just sit in front of a computer and read about it. The best way to kind of understand if it's right for you, if you've got the right skills, is to go and speak to people that do the job. And I think that was really good advice. And when I did go speak to business analysts, product managers, agile coaches, I got such a better understanding of what jobs are involved in tech, what jobs are involved in product, what skills they use, and whether I think I had those skills. And I was really able to, especially with the business analyst and the product manager, they were really helpful in basically confirming my own beliefs that actually, I think I do have these hard skills, these soft skills that would enable me to do these jobs. I just don't have the experience. So that really helped me to basically think, okay, I'm gonna find something, and it needs to be entry level, and I'm committed. I'm comfortable maybe going down in salary to be able to start this journey again, because I can see kind of the long-term benefits. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice, to go speak to people. I'm seeing on the chat that some people are kind of asking about entering the sector as an older person or with 20 plus years experience in a particular role. I remember halfway into my journey of trying to understand what role is going to be right for me, I was certainly considering kind of moving into a non-tech role, but in technology. So, I'm I've essentially spent the past 7 years of my life as kind of a project manager, as an administrator, delivering training now and again, workshops, those kind of things. And so I was looking at stuff like working in the training departments of a tech company, or even the admin departments of a tech company, whatever my skills would best kind of translate, but to get into the sector. I was really considering that as a route in. And I think people have done that before, plenty of people, because what I understand of companies that operate in tech, they're very keen to train their own staff members. And you can enter in the learning and development department once a year, say, actually, I'm really interested in moving into a more tech role. I've heard from a number of people that that's something that tech companies are really supportive of doing, especially if you're already a staff member. So that's something that I was considering before I kind of decided I'm going to try for a product manager or a business analyst first. If that failed, I was certainly going to look for roles that really fit my experience better, I guess you could say, because I felt like I had the skills to be a product manager but didn't have the experience. But if that wasn't going to work, my plan B was to enter it in from a different route and then see where I got from there. So that's kind of another option and another way in.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said there, Louis. Having worked for a fintech company a couple of years ago, a lot of the product owners that we had in that department came from working within kind of the customer service department, because they knew the product, they knew everything about it, and they were the best people to move across and train as product owners. So yes, I agree. There's very different routes into working within the digital and tech, and kind of finding a company that you want to work for and finding opportunities within that is definitely a route to consider. Tom, what piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Louis. I like the way Louis drew attention to some of this, the chat as well, at this point about going into perhaps after a few years in another job, certainly doubling down on the skills you've got already and really presenting those as a positive is really important. So if you've got communication skills that you've learned from another role, then try and really sell that. And while you're trying to bring the skills so that you can do the job that you really want to do within the digital side, then communication or written. I noticed that Google even have people that write content for them. So I mean, there is such a wide range of roles within this meta profession of coding, and you can find a way for yourself. Some people would say get the experience. Certainly what I kind of did, going to Brighton for 2 years. So that was one approach, to kind of just get your foot in the door and try and get a role for 2 years. That can be one solution. But if you're keen to get results quickly, then definitely doubling down on the skills that you've already got, because at the end of the day, you need to be adding as much as possible to be adding value to the company. And companies do really like having, the marketing side is really important. Like we're saying, the customer service. There's several aspects of the business that might not be adequately covered by the company. So that would be one way to add value.
Thank you. And what about you, Vicky? What piece of advice would you give someone?
Firstly, I would say to surround yourself with really supportive people who can celebrate some of your achievements, remind you that you are on the right track. Like Tom said, in terms of recognizing your skills, surround yourself with people who will speak honestly with you about, okay, help me identify, like, what are my good points? What do I need to work on? Maybe explore mentoring, because I am a big fan of mentoring. I think it can have brilliant impacts for both the mentor and the mentee. And I think it's really important. I read this recently and I can't remember who had written it, but this sense of not to compare yourself to anyone else. I've spoken to much more experienced devs, and that this sense of imposter syndrome is still very much is real. It is alive, and it will continue to kind of be with me for the rest of my career. But I can only compare myself to where I started. like 18 months ago, and just kind of focus on those achievements, because I would go absolutely mental if I compared myself daily to the wealth of knowledge in my team. And I think that, like, when you're starting out in a new career, you know, I went from a management position down to knowing absolutely nothing. And that is a real shock. And you can't keep going, well, I used to know everything, because it's just a completely different life now. So I think, yeah, trying to just keep in mind your achievements, keep in mind of what's in your control to change, and yeah, just be realistic in what you can achieve and in the timeframes, really.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And I think, yeah, the point you made on imposter syndrome, it's one of those things that everyone actually has it, but at some point, but we don't think other people have it. We just think it's ourselves. And we've actually got a session on Thursday afternoon where we're going to be looking a little bit more at things like imposter syndrome and how to build confidence. Because as you said, Vicky, you went from a position where you knew everything about that role and that company to not knowing anything. And it's how do you kind of start to build your confidence around that as well. So we will be touching on that on Thursday afternoon as well. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to jump into some of the questions that we've got. And there's been a couple, I think Louis picked up on earlier, there's been a couple kind of specifically age related. So we've got here about what advice would you give to someone switching career if they've been in the same role for 20 plus years? So kind of that's really ingrained in them, I'm guessing. Do you think the digital industry is open to taking on older workers? And there have been a couple of questions around age as well. Who wants to go first?
I don't mind going first on that one. I would say, so the first 3 months of my apprenticeship were spent at Coronation on a boot camp, surrounded by other students wanting to upskill and explore the opportunities and going on to apprenticeships or, you know, other employment opportunities. And there were such a range of ages, from people straight out of school up until like 60s. It by no means is a age restricted industry, and I did see many of those go on to new opportunities after the boot camp. In terms of being in the same position for 20 plus years, I would say that you know, things change. Like, even if you're in the same role, like, the requirements change, the business changes. Like, look at how you've adapted to that. Again, kind of take stock of where you started out and where you ended up, because it won't, even if you think, oh, I've been doing the same thing for 20 years, you won't have been if you actually think about how things have changed. So yeah, like, see how you've adapted to those, see what new skills you've picked up, how quickly you pick them up. Because yeah, I think there's a lot of positivity to be brought out of that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of chat again yesterday about those skills that you build up in, you know, other careers, and, you know, what you've built up in those 20 years are really valuable within the new business. So it doesn't mean that you have to leave all those skills behind. It's really about kind of how you reshape them.
Yeah, I think there were some capital letters on transferable skills in the chat, and it's really true. Yeah,
everything is a transferable skill, absolutely. We've got another question here about how does the panel find studying and working on an apprenticeship? Does the study dovetail with the work? Can you see how the study that you do and how that applies to your job? Who wants to, Vicky, do you, as you're still on an apprenticeship?
Yep, no problem. It varies. So I think the apprenticeship has a very strict structure and very strict things that you need to be able to demonstrate that you can meet by the end. And that sometimes does clash with the business needs at the time in terms of what I might be working on. But there is an understanding between me, the apprenticeship provider Cognation, and my employer that my apprenticeship visa can pass, and I need to be given the opportunities to meet those criteria to be able to get through and pass, basically. Mostly it's all been interlinked and it has supported my development in my role. But there's definitely been opportunities where I've kind of been pulled in 2 separate directions. So it can be a little bit frustrating at times like that. Like, there is a lot of admin that comes along with the apprenticeship that sometimes just really annoying and frustrating and gets in the way. But yeah, like, ultimately, without this route, I probably wouldn't be where I am. So it's definitely beneficial, and I just keep reminding myself that.
What about you, Tom? Would you agree with that, having kind of studied to get into the position you're in?
Oh yeah, I mean it's ongoing. That's the thing. I mean it's because the boot camp I did in 2017, I thought, oh yeah, I'll do the 3 months and then I'll be a developer, and that wasn't the case, unfortunately. Not that I don't want to kind of I just want to say to everyone, you know, it is like everyone has already said. I mean, it is a big challenge, definitely. And as Vicky pointed out, there's people on your team who have perhaps been doing this for a whole career, so you do have to respond. I don't think people mind explaining things once, maybe twice, but if it gets to 3 times, then they might start to get a bit annoyed in any profession. So making sure that you note things down and really try and stay focused, regardless of the amount of information that's being thrown at you, that is going to be really key. And positivity as well, just making sure that you're positive and able to keep that skill of developing that skill of problem solving. And you are expected to learn things very quickly. But the one good thing is that actually, because the thing is changing so quickly, often you're going to know as much as the next person as well. So there is that kind of leveling aspect as well. But learning the basics of development can help with that as well. Just the things that don't change. Try and find the things that don't change in your profession, and then you can start to respond to change.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valuable point you just made, that things are changing so often. So yeah, you might be coming into something new, but you're learning something at the same time as a developer with maybe 10 years experience, because it is a new piece of software. It's something new that's coming out. So I suppose it's that never feel like you don't know everything, because no one does, because it is changing all the time. There's another couple of very specific ones here that I'll just run through. We've got a few more minutes. So Amy's put something, are there any resources for those with specifically with secretarial law in administrator experience to the end of the tech industry? Now I can see, Louis, you've responded. And what would be your answer?
Yeah, I mean, so I've put a few videos up on there, because in my previous role, which I only left a month ago, one of the last things I did in that role was help kind of put together a load of videos all about apprenticeships, not just in digital, across different industries. So I've shared kind of the playlist of that on YouTube, but there's a really good video on there, which is essentially another discussion like this. They're all kind of panel interviews with different people who are doing apprenticeships on retraining and doing a career change through an apprentice. So it's something that does happen. There's no age limit on apprentices, as far as I understand. But I'd really have a look at that if you're interested in a route into an apprenticeship and you're not sure how to do that as an older person. But certainly, again, if you have skills, if you've got experience and skills in a particular role, for example, secretarial or administrative, and you're not sure, what role to move into in tech, so there's 2 things you can do. You can do research and meet people in different roles, like I did. So I met agile coaches, product managers, business analysts. I knew that I wasn't a technical person. I wasn't going to be a developer or a coder. I knew I was going to be more on the business side of it, the organization side of it. So I kind of ring fence whatever roles I could find that were related to that, and then found out about them. Or the other route is to use your experience to your advantage. So if you're, for example, if you're an administrator working in construction at a construction company and you want to work in tech, look for administrator roles at tech companies, in organizations that have big tech teams or are purely a tech company, because those organizations still need people who aren't necessarily working on product, aren't necessarily technical experts. They still need people to run the organization, work in the HR departments, work in the finance departments. And if that is where your experience is, like I mentioned before, you can enter the industry doing what your you're good at and what you're experienced at, and from there you can start to figure out if you did want to make the career change, what other opportunities there are within that organization to retrain, to relearn. As I said, lots of tech companies, from my understanding, are very keen to offer, continual professional development courses and to support career changes within the organization. So if you're not sure which roles you think you can aim for with your skills, then you can maybe enter the sector doing a role that you're kind of experienced at, that might not be a tech role, and from that point internally understand and find out how you can retrain and find a position that might be a step away from what you're used to into a different kind of career path. So that's probably what I would say to that.
Yeah, no, that's some really good advice there. And I would suggest anyone that hasn't already, have a look at the links. There's a few that have been posted in the chat, linking you through to videos and kind of some of that research, which is stuff that Louis obviously spent a couple of years doing himself. So it's worth having a look there. Unfortunately, we are coming to the end of this panel session now. What I would say is, as the week goes on, there's going to be more information that comes out. We've got another panel session in the morning with 3 other people that have also made that switch. Very different journeys again, so that might be able to give you some more options of how the paths they've taken and how they've entered the industry. But also on Friday, we'll be ending the week with a session that's specifically about next steps and where you can start to look for additional support, additional resources that can help with your research as well. So if you can, I'd continue to come back every day, have a look at what's on the schedule for each day, and maybe come back, and those sessions on Friday may help with the next steps as well. Just to reiterate some of the comments that have been said, apprenticeships are absolutely open to people of all ages. Manchester Digital run one. I think we have, on our last cohort, it went from the age of 18 up to, I think 45, 46 was the oldest, but that doesn't mean that that's the limit. That's just based on who applied. So there is opportunities out there, regardless of your age and your experience. There's just very different routes in. So thank you to Louis, Tom and Vicky for joining us on the panel and for sharing your journeys and your advice. There's some really, really good advice that you've given to everyone there.